Hello guys, MonkeyBot here. Now that Thrones of Decay and patch 5.1 have settled in nicely, I think it's time to start talking about the next DLC in Total War Warhammer 3, which will be the Khorne, Ogre Kingdoms and Greenskin DLC. And talking about patch 6.0 as a whole and finding out where these new legendary lords will be starting, as well as any potential moves that existing legendary lords may have. This is all just speculation guys, so don't take this as confirmation. If you think that some of these legendary lords should be moved somewhere else, obviously feel free to leave those suggestions in the comment section down below. And if you are enjoying this kind of content, obviously don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll get straight into the first legendary lord that I will be talking about, which will be Gorfang, Ironclaw. I wanted to start with Ironclaw. I think out of the 4 legendary lords that are going to be introduced in patch 6.0, I think his start location is the most obvious. Ironclaw was the original builder of the Orc fortress of Iron Rock, which is in the same province as Black Crag. So like I said, it's going to feel like a very familiar start location, especially those who have played Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2 and the Grimgor campaign. And I think that's originally the reason why they moved Grimgor over here, was to actually make space for Ironclaw. So like I said, it's going to feel very, very similar. Obviously, it's going to have Ironclaw's unique mechanics. He is a very strategic general, one of the most strategic generals out of all of the Greenskins, which is very unique for a Greenskin. Units, most of them just run in and bash heads and hope for the best. But yes, he is a very strategic guy, but we're not going to get too much into the campaign mechanics right here. So how is his campaign going to play out, and how is it going to be different to how Grimgor's is? So I think he is going to start in Black Crag. As I said, he may start with 2 provinces because Iron Rock is technically his home, but I think taking Iron Rock immediately isn't going to be too big of an issue, and then he'll move up his way to Carrick Dawn. You have an easy confederation over here with Rotgut, so this could be a very good alliance slash confederation early on. The differences from Warhammer 1, Warhammer 2, Queek is much closer now, so you'll likely run into Queek early on, as well as Clan Rictus. So you've now got 2 Skaven legendary lords which could be bashing on your front door. But I think your main threat will still be Thorgrim up here, although you also have a nice ally in Mount Gunberg up here with Skarsnik. So I really think that 6.0 is going to be dedicated to taking out this Order Tide, or at least weakening it to the point where it's not so devastating as it currently is. Which is why I think this is going to be a good place for Ironclaw. It's going to really pressure Thorgrim now. He's going to have many enemies on multiple fronts. So you're going to have Rotgut, you're going to have Ironclaw, you're going to have Skarsnik, all piling down on him over here to try and take him out. And yes, but apart from that, I think it's going to be a very, very similar campaign for Ironclaw, as I've said previously. Anyway, moving on to the next legendary lord, we're going to be going to the Ogre Kingdoms now of Golgfag Maneater. So this one's a little bit more difficult to pinpoint the exact start location here, but you can kind of get a general gist of the area that he'll be in. His lore starts by offering his assistance to the Greenskin Orc boss Gnashrak. This Orc boss is not a major Orc boss, but is still currently in the game, and is actually the starting enemy for both Skarsnik and Thorgrim. In the lore, it says that this Orc boss and Gorfang is attacking Carrick Adrin, but then Gorfag stabs this Orc boss in the back, cuts off his arm, and then shows it to Umgrim as a peace offering. Umgrim then decides to hire Golgfag Maneater, and that is how the story begins. So the start location for Golgfag will most likely be in the northern World's Edge Mountains, but it's already a little bit cramped up there. You've got Skarsnik, you've got Azag, you've got Umgrim, but there's one province that hasn't been touched by a legendary lord yet, and that's Blackwater with Zufbar, specifically in the settlement of Carrick Dromar. So like I said, I do think he'll be starting Carrick Dromar. He will start off with his army over here, attacking this initial army before moving on to Oakenhammer, and then finally moving on to Zufbar to finish off the Dwarven faction. His second enemy will likely be Grom Peak, more moving on to the Fallen King Mountains. That's if Ungrim hasn't taken that before. And then him attacking the Greenskins, he will likely try and get a non-aggression pact with Ungrim. Ungrim may refuse an attack back, and then at that point, Skarsnik will likely ally up with the Ogre Kingdoms. Or none of that may happen, and he may just ally up with the Vampire Counts over here. It's the Ogre Kingdoms. You do not know who they're going to side with, and you just don't know what's going to happen. He does technically have a monument over here. I did want to point that out at some point. I don't think it's currently in game anywhere, but in lore there is a monument over by the Great Hall of Greasus, dedicated to Golgfag, but I think he's just so close to Greasus at this point, and Greasus can't really be moved. I know the same argument can be done with Skrag, but I'll get to Skrag in a little bit, because I think Skrag will likely be moved in the next patch to a certain location that's not even in the game yet. Anyway, moving back to Golgfag. So yes, he is going to take these two initial provinces here, and then he's going to be stuck between 3 different legendary lords, being Skarsnik, Ungrim, and Vlad over here, and he will need to decide which one he wants to ally up with, which one he wants to start attacking and pushing out of, and then that's the campaign over here. And you can have a vastly different experience depending on who you side with. You either go into the Badlands over here with Skarsnik, or you go and push into the Empire with Vlad. Like, your campaign is going to be extremely unique every single time. And yes, I do think it's going to be a good start location for him. So while I'm on the subject of Ogre Kingdoms, I want to talk about Skrag a little bit, because I do think Skrag will likely be moved in the next patch. His start location has always been a bit of a strange one. The Border Princess is just a really weird start location. He's already been moved once already, but I think it's time to move him again. But I think it's going to be part of a map that isn't actually accessible yet, because I also think that we're going to get a map expansion in patch 6.0. And I think it's finally time to start introducing the Kingdoms of Ind. Now, I don't think we're going to get the whole Kingdoms of Ind yet. We'll probably only get the northern part, simply because there's just not enough legendary lords to fill that area yet. But eventually we will get the whole thing. I just don't think it's going to be in this patch. So where do I think Skrag will specifically go in Ind? And I think it's going to be on the western side of the island over here. I think having an Ogre Legendary Lord in this area will be a great addition to the game. I don't think it's going to be on the western side. That is going to be spared for a different Legendary Lord, which will also be coming in patch 6.0. Which I'll talk about later on. And I don't think he's going to go in the mountains. I do believe the Monkey King will likely be starting in the mountains when we eventually get him. If I was to put him even further down south, even though I don't think it's going to be coming out in this patch, I do think a Dark Elf Legendary Lord will likely go down here, so you can have the Dark Elves, High Elves, and Slaanesh DLC that I was talking about in a previous video quite a while now. So I do think a Dark Elf Legendary Lord will be here. Skrag will be here, another Legendary Lord, which I'll talk about later, will be here, and maybe 1 or 2 more, but I think 3 is enough to put in Ind. It's not a massive country, so having 3 Legendary Lords in here would be good, as well as the Monkey King in the borders between Cathay and the Ogre Kingdoms. So Skrag's campaign is going to evolve as the game develops, but on release, if he does move over to here, it's a very simple campaign. He's going to probably go to war against this Legendary Lord here before moving up into the rest of Cathay. Probably moving over this way as well if Koresh is opened up at some point. So yeah, this campaign is going to evolve in many different ways. You have a nice ally with Greasus over here, which is close enough to confederate and ally up, but not so close that it's going to be a too similar campaign. I do think you're going to get a very different campaign to what Greasus is over here. You've also got Kugath, who could also start pushing his way over this end now that this territory will be opened up. But yes, I do think it'll be a much better location, because there's just so many problems with Skrag's campaign right now. And I do think if I was going to put the other Ogre Legendary Lord over here, these are too close to be... They're going to be similar campaigns, and they're not going to be varied enough in campaign style. So yeah, I do think one of them needs to move. So I think Skrag is the most likely candidate. So yeah, that's why I am putting him in Ind. And now we are on to the Khorne part of the DLC. So this is Skulltaker. So Skulltaker is probably the hardest one to predict where he's going to start, because he's literally everywhere. He fights Dwarfs, he fights High Elves, he fights the Empire, he fights everyone. He does not care who he fights as long as that person is the most strongest being around. So I've thought of many options for him. He could either go into Bretonnia in Montfort, he could start in Norsca, he could start in the Chaos Waste, he could start in the Empire. There are so many options for him, and it's so difficult to pinpoint the exact one, but eventually I did sort of settle for the Empire, specifically the settlement of Wrecker's Point. So Wrecker's Point is the northern west part of the Empire over here, just bordering Norsca, and I think this will be the perfect place for Skulltaker. He can go down here and take the Black Pit off of these Greenskins before going to war against Marienburg. So he has a nice 2 provinces before he is forced to go to war against any of the other legendary lords in the surrounding area. Well, he could go up to Nordland, to be honest, but I think after that, Khorne and Reichland will likely declare war on him. I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue for Reichland if you are the player playing as Karl Franz over here. The Greenskins were already quite aggressive in the early game, taking the southern settlements over here, just bordering Altdorf. So instead of having these Greenskins take these settlements over here, you're going to have Skulltaker take on Marienburg, so then that will be the threat leading into Altdorf, and you will have some support from Khorne as well, pushing back. So I don't think it's going to be a massive problem for Karl Franz, especially in the Thrones of Decay patch. Wisseland over here with, what's her face, Elspeth, tends to hold back Vlad and Isabella quite well in the campaigns that I've experienced. So it leaves a lot of space for Karl Franz to focus on the northern part of the Empire, dealing with Festus and Skulltaker. Skulltaker's campaign, I think, will be a very good one. It'll be a very interesting campaign. Fighting in the Empire is always really nice. You always get a variety of factions going in there. If you want to retreat away because the Empire is too strong for you to deal with, you can easily go back into Norsca and then into the Northern Chaos Waste to have some really safe home territory for you. But I think with this campaign, you're going to want to be aggressive. You're going to want to go and take Midland. You're going to want to take Nordland. And then start pushing Reichland and Wisseland down here, as well as Khorne. I think it's going to be a very unique campaign for the Khorne factions. We've only got one other Khorne faction over here, which is mainly fighting Greenskins and Dwarfs. So fighting against men, being the Bretonnians and the Empire, will be a nice change for Skulltaker. And now we're going to be moving to the 4th and final legendary lord that's going to be introduced in patch 6.0. It's going to be the FLC lord. We do know it's going to be a Khornite character, so that slims it down quite a bit. And I believe it is going to be Arbol the Undefeated. Originally, I thought Arbol was going to be the highlight of the Khorne side of the DLC, but now that Skulltaker has taken that spot, which originally I thought the Skulltaker was going to be the FLC side of the DLC, that means we now have Arbol as the FLC character in this patch. Now, I want to focus on one part of the lore with Arbol, which is where he was attacking during the end times, and he was actually invading Ind and Koresh. So I think now that we've opened up Ind a little bit, I think that'll be a perfect place for him to start. So yes, I do believe that Arbol will be starting in the lands of Ind when they open this up in patch 6.0. I do think this specific area will be a great location for him, just below the mountain regions over here. This will put him very close to Koresh, so he could just cross the river and be in Koresh over here, as well as being in the mainland Ind to invade that also. He has Skrag the Slaughterer nearby, so that could be an early legendary lord to bash heads, but he could also completely ignore that, as he is right next to the river, and actually just sail all the way up to the river to the entrance of Cathay and go for Fu Hung, which at that point the Golden Order would likely have taken, and then start pushing in the southern lands of Cathay instead of pushing his way through the mountain. So you've got multiple choices here in this campaign. Either take over Ind, eventually take over Koresh when that is sorted, or just ignore them completely and start doing a southern invasion into Cathay. It's going to be another unique Khorne campaign again, so you're going to be dealing with a lot of, I would say this would be likely filled with Lizardmen and Cathay factions, High Elves, Dark Elves. You're going to have Ogres over here as well. You're going to have the High Elves down here. You can even push all the way down here into the southern Chaos Waste also if you like. So again, you're going to have many different factions. You're right next to Krugath for a potential ally as well. Yeah, you've got a lot going for you in this campaign, and I think it will be a very, very good campaign for Arbol. So that is it. That is my predictions for patch 6.0 and where these legendary lords will start, as well as one existing legendary lord being moved. What do you think about these changes? I think I'm pretty accurate on most of them. I think the only one that could be floating around in the air a little bit will be Skulltaker, just because his lore is so inaccurate on where his start location could be. But I'm pretty confident on the other three. I don't see them moving too far away from those start locations that I suggested. Also, we haven't had it confirmed that there will be a map expansion in patch 6.0, so keep in it's still a little bit of speculation there, so don't take that too seriously. But what do you think about these changes? Do you like them? Do you not like them? If you have any other suggestions about where these characters should start, please feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. But until then, guys, if you're enjoying this kind of content, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye for now.